There are moments in war when training stops being enough. The plan has collapsed. The officer beside you is dead. The enemy is closer than anyone expected, and there may be only seconds to decide whether to run, surrender, or keep fighting. During the Second World War, millions of American servicemen entered combat across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. Most were not expecting to become heroes. Many were young men who had been mechanics, farmers, students, factory workers, and clerks only months earlier. But in moments of extraordinary danger, some of them made decisions that would later seem almost impossible. A medic who repeatedly walked into enemy fire without carrying a weapon. A machine gunner who kept fighting after most of his position had been destroyed. A soldier who climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and fought an entire German attack almost alone. And one infantryman whose commander struggled to explain how he survived enough battles to become one of the most decorated American soldiers of the war. These are 7 extraordinary moments of American bravery during World War II. And the final story became so famous that Hollywood eventually had to tone it down because audiences might not have believed what actually happened. Number 7, Charles Commando Kelly, Italy, September 1943. American troops were fighting their way through the Italian campaign after the landings at Salerno. The Germans were determined to stop them. Near Altavilla, American positions came under intense attack. One of the soldiers defending them was Private Charles E. Kelly of the 36th Infantry Division. Kelly had already earned a reputation among the men around him. He was aggressive, fearless, and apparently willing to use almost anything as a weapon. During the fighting, German troops repeatedly attacked an American ammunition storage position. Kelly helped defend it. He fired rifles. He used a Browning automatic rifle. He fired a machine gun. He threw grenades. And as ammunition began running short, he reportedly used whatever weapons were available around him. The situation deteriorated. German soldiers approached dangerously close. American troops were eventually ordered to withdraw. But before Kelly left, he continued covering the retreat. For his actions at Altavilla, Kelly received the Medal of Honor. His story is important because battlefield courage doesn't always look like a dramatic charge. Sometimes it is simply refusing to leave while everyone around you is trying desperately to escape. But Kelly was still fighting with conventional weapons. The next man entered battle without a rifle at all. Number 6, Desmond Doss, Okinawa. The battle was becoming one of the bloodiest of the Pacific War. American troops were attacking heavily fortified Japanese positions built into caves, ridges, and underground defenses. One of the worst places was a steep escarpment later associated with the fighting around Hacksaw Ridge. Among the Americans climbing toward the Japanese positions was Desmond Doss. Doss was a combat medic, but unlike almost everyone around him, he refused to carry a weapon. His religious beliefs prevented him from killing. That decision made him controversial during training. Some soldiers initially believed a man without a rifle would become a liability when combat began. Okinawa changed their minds when American troops came under devastating fire and were forced back from the ridge. Wounded soldiers remained scattered across the battlefield. Doss stayed. Enemy soldiers were still nearby. Artillery and gunfire continued. Yet Doss moved from wounded man to wounded man. He treated them, dragged them toward the edge of the escarpment, then lowered them down to safety using rope, one after another. Each trip meant exposing himself again. Each wounded man meant returning toward the fighting instead of away from it. Doss later became associated with saving approximately 75 men during the action. The exact count was debated, even among those involved. Doss believed the number was lower. His commanding officer believed it was higher. 75 became the commonly accepted estimate, but the number is almost secondary. What matters is that Doss repeatedly returned to an area other men were desperately trying to escape, and he did it without a firearm. He would later receive the Medal of Honor, the first conscientious objector to receive it for actions in combat. Yet courage doesn't always mean refusing to kill. Sometimes it means holding a position when an entire enemy force is trying to destroy you. Number 5. John Basilone at Guadalcanal. October 1942. Guadalcanal. The United States was still in the early stages of the Pacific War. Japanese forces were attempting to break the American defensive perimeter around Henderson Field. The fighting was brutal. Among the Marines defending the line was Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. Basilone commanded machine gun sections. During a major Japanese attack, his position came under enormous pressure. The enemy attacked through darkness. Machine guns overheated. Ammunition became critical. Men were wounded and killed. At one point, Basilone moved through exposed areas to bring ammunition to his guns. When one machine gun position was knocked out, he helped keep another operating. The barrel of a heavy machine gun could become dangerously hot during sustained fire. Yet the Marines had to continue firing, because once those weapons stopped, Japanese troops could close the distance. Basilone moved between positions under fire and helped maintain the defense. The attack continued for hours. By the end, American positions had survived. Basilone received the Medal of Honor for his actions on Guadalcanal. He became famous in the United States. He could have remained home selling war bonds. Instead, he requested a return to combat. In February 1945, Basilone landed with Marines on Iwo Jima. Again, he exposed himself to enemy fire while helping his unit advance. This time, he did not survive. John Basilone was killed on Iwo Jima. His story became one of the most famous examples of Marine courage during World War II. But the next story shows how quickly an ordinary infantry battle could become almost unbelievable. Number 4. Daniel Inouye, Italy, April 1945. The war in Europe was approaching its end, but the killing had not stopped. Second Lieutenant Daniel Inouye was serving with the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. The unit was composed largely of Japanese American soldiers. Many of their families had experienced discrimination and internment back in the United States while they fought overseas. Inouye was leading an attack against German defensive positions. Then the Germans opened fire. Inouye was hit, but he continued advancing. He attacked enemy positions using grenades and his submachine gun. Then another explosion struck him. His right arm was severely wounded, yet the attack continued. Accounts of the action describe Inouye continuing to fight despite catastrophic injuries. Eventually, his men reached him. His arm had to be amputated. The war ended shortly afterward. Inouye returned home, entered politics, and decades later became one of the most prominent senators in American history. For his wartime actions, his Distinguished Service Cross was eventually upgraded to the Medal of Honor in 2000. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story is the contradiction. A young man fighting for a country that had imprisoned many people of his own ancestry, still leading an assault directly into German defenses. And he was far from the only Japanese-American soldier demonstrating extraordinary bravery. The 442nd became one of the most decorated units of its size and length of service in American military history. Yet our next soldier survived not one extraordinary battle, but battle after battle after battle. Number 3, Matt Urban. If you were writing a fictional war hero, Matt Urban's record might sound excessive. North Africa, Sicily, France, Belgium, multiple wounds, repeated returns to combat. Urban served as an officer in the U.S. Army's 9th Infantry Division. During the Normandy campaign in 1944, his unit encountered heavy German resistance. Urban was wounded, then wounded again. At one point, after being evacuated, he learned that his unit was struggling. Instead of remaining safely behind the lines, he returned. Still recovering, during another action, American troops were pinned down by German fire. Urban reportedly climbed onto a tank and operated its machine gun, helping rally the attack despite exposing himself to enemy weapons. Again and again, he returned to combat after injury. Eventually, another wound nearly killed him. For decades, administrative complications prevented his full recognition. Then in 1980, Matt Urban was awarded the Medal of Honor. His citation covered actions over a period of weeks during the Normandy campaign. Urban's bravery wasn't one sudden decision. It was repeated. Get wounded, return, lead another attack. Get wounded again, return again. There is something psychologically different about that kind of courage. A soldier who survives one terrible experience knows exactly what he is returning to, which makes the decision to go back even harder. But even Urban's story involved fighting alongside other American forces. The next man would find himself almost alone. Number 2, Alvin York? No. Wrong war. And that's exactly why the next story is frequently overlooked. Because World War II produced its own extraordinary American infantrymen. One of them was Vernon Baker. Number 2, Vernon Baker. Italy, April 1945. American forces were attacking German mountain defenses. Lieutenant Vernon Baker served with the 92nd Infantry Division. As a Black American officer in a segregated military, Baker fought not only against the German army, but within a system that did not treat him equally. During an assault on German positions, Baker moved forward. He encountered enemy observation posts, machine gun positions, fortified defenses. One by one, Baker attacked them. He killed enemy troops, destroyed positions, and helped clear the route for his men. He repeatedly moved ahead despite heavy fire. Several soldiers around him were killed. The attack became increasingly dangerous, yet Baker continued. The next day, he volunteered to lead another advance. For decades, Baker's actions were not recognized with the Medal of Honor. In the 1990s, the U.S. Army reviewed the records of Black soldiers whose bravery may have been overlooked because of racial discrimination. In 1997, President Bill Clinton awarded Vernon Baker the Medal of Honor. He was the only one of the 7 Black World War II servicemen honored during that ceremony who was still alive to receive it personally, more than 50 years after the battle. His story illustrates something important. Heroism is not always recognized when it happens. Sometimes history takes decades to catch up. But there is one final story. And unlike almost every man we've discussed, this soldier became so famous that he eventually portrayed himself on screen. Number 1. Audie Murphy. France, January 26, 1945. Audie Murphy was 20 years old. He was already an experienced combat soldier. His unit was near Holtzwihr in eastern France when German troops launched an attack supported by tanks. The American position was in danger of being overrun. Murphy ordered his men to withdraw toward more defensible ground, but he stayed. Nearby was a burning American tank destroyer. It had been hit. It could explode. Murphy climbed onto it anyway. Mounted on the vehicle was a .50 caliber machine gun. Murphy began firing. German infantry were advancing. He fired into them. Enemy artillery landed nearby. German tanks continued moving. Murphy remained exposed on top of the burning vehicle. He called artillery fire by radio while continuing to operate the machine gun. At times, German soldiers came dangerously close. According to his Medal of Honor citation, Murphy fought for approximately an hour, alone, wounded, on top of a vehicle that might explode beneath him. Eventually, the German attack lost momentum. Murphy returned to his men, and then, instead of simply retreating, he helped organize a counterattack. For this action, Audie Murphy received the Medal of Honor. By the end of the war, he had become one of the most decorated American combat soldiers of World War II. But there is a darker side to his story. The war did not simply disappear when Murphy returned home. He later spoke publicly about the psychological effects of combat and suffered symptoms associated with what would now be recognized as post-traumatic stress. That is important, because bravery does not mean a person feels no fear, and surviving does not mean a person leaves the battlefield untouched. Murphy's courage was not the absence of fear. It was his decision to continue acting while surrounded by it. Years later, Hollywood turned his autobiography into the film To Hell and Back. Audie Murphy played himself, yet some details of his real wartime experiences were reportedly considered almost too extreme for audiences. A strange problem for a war movie. Reality was difficult to believe. 7 men, different backgrounds, different battlefields, different definitions of courage. Charles Kelly fought with almost every weapon he could find. Desmond Doss saved lives without carrying one. John Basilone held a machine gun position and later volunteered to return to combat. Daniel Inouye kept fighting after devastating wounds. Matt Urban repeatedly returned to the front. Vernon Baker attacked fortified positions despite overwhelming danger, and Audie Murphy stood on a burning tank destroyer while an enemy attack closed around him. But there is something these stories can easily hide. For every famous name, there were thousands of acts of courage that never became citations. A soldier pulling a wounded friend into cover. A medic refusing to abandon a casualty. A tank crew returning to a damaged vehicle. An infantryman holding his position for 10 more seconds so others could escape. Most of those names never appeared in newspapers. Most never received medals, and many never came home. That's why the bravery of American servicemen in World War II cannot really be reduced to 7 stories. These are simply 7 moments where history happened to record what men were capable of doing when everything around them told them to stop. And perhaps that is the most unsettling thing about courage. You rarely know you have it until the moment running away would be easier.